Every franchisor I've talked to says they're selective with their franchisees. Every single one. And then you watch what they actually do when money is on the table. And a lot of them fold. Stephen and Jason Parker don't fold. They turn down their first franchisee candidate. These guys are building something methodically, listening to people who've been there before, and they might be the first franchisors I've met who actually mean it when they talk about franchisee selection. Welcome to Franchise Leader Spotlight. I'm Catherine LeBlanc. This series highlights the leaders shaping franchising today, how they built their careers, what they're focused on now, and what they believe is coming next for the industry. Let's dive in. Brought to you by my podcast host. Hi, today's conversation is with Steve and Jason Parker. They are co-founders and co-CEOs of K9 Resorts. Hey guys, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to get started with you guys today and learn a little bit about what's happening in your business right now. Where I want to start is, what is your goals for the year? So tell me something that you're doubling down on this year and what will happen if you get that right.
Yeah, so this has been, it's going to be a really important year for the company as we are opening the most number of units that we are going to open ever in the history of K9 Resorts.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
So
fantastic.
our
So what's your
target-
goal? Yeah.
Our target is 16 to 18 resorts.
Okay.
Most of those are under construction, so we feel really good about achieving that target.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to note that we've always been very careful to not grow too quickly.
Mhm.
And we've really spent the last couple of years fine-tuning and building out our processes for our franchise owners, building up the senior leadership team to the point where we now have a full C-suite. And we did that intentionally so that we can staff up prior to the major momentum that we're going to experience this year.
Yeah. Look, there's a couple of things that you said there that I absolutely love. Number one, you're not projecting growth that's not there. So most of those units being under construction, you are not promising things that are not to come to fruition. And then the intentionality of the growth. A lot of the conversations that I have with CEOs, and we'll get to this too, we talk about what are some things that we can improve in the franchising industry, and that obsession with unit count and the obsession with, I am showing success or associating success with the number of units or with how many units you're opening seems to have a negative connotation right now. And we all know why. And so for our listeners, I'll just briefly say, because most of the time when you open something that you're really not ready for, it happens too fast, you don't get the infrastructure in place. And so to your point around team building, it sounds like you guys have been really intentional about how you're building the infrastructure to support that growth.
You're right. And we've been very disciplined, and we're going to continue to be that way. We're fortunate that we have a very supportive board. It started out as a board of advisors, and now as a board of directors. And we all are aligned on that vision and that goal. We intentionally opened up a couple units at a time and then got up to 6 and 8 and 10. Here we are at 16 to 18. Which is our largest number yet, but it was all done by design.
Yeah, awesome. Tell me about your team building experience. I think that a lot of CEOs struggle with, and founders struggle with, when to bring on the people, what kind of people to bring on. Should you hire kind of 2 years ahead of the future, or should you hire for what you need right now? I'd love to hear kind of how you guys thought about that.
What Jason and I focus on is that I think we represent a very good yin and yang, if you will. Jason's good at, and Jason enjoys doing more of the administrative, a lot on the franchising side, working directly with the franchisees, marketing, finance. And I am a little bit more of the visionary, a little bit more operational focused. So that's what I enjoy doing. So I think those skill sets complement each other. And we try to do the same thing when we brought on the C-suite.
Yeah.
So we brought on people that, Jason and I think are more of a big picture thinkers. So we brought on people that can implement a little bit better, that can integrate all the different departments. And so I think that we really tried to focus on bringing on an all-star team in our C-suite that really complements the skill sets that Jason and I currently have.
I love that. So you're not trying to replicate, you're trying to expand.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Tell me, what is the hardest leadership decision that you guys are wrestling with right now?
It's a good question. I think one of the hardest leadership decisions is balancing the control
Mhm.
versus not micromanaging. And I
Yes.
think that's something that at least I personally struggle with,
Mhm.
maybe even more so than my brother, because I am a self-diagnosed and recovering control freak.
Yes.
So I think in the beginning, when you're a founder and you're a CEO of a company,
Mhm.
you really want to have your hands on everything, your finger on the pulse of everything. And then you realize that that really is not sustainable for growth.
Nope.
So I think the pendulum sometimes can swing too far.
Yeah.
So I think maybe in the last year or two, we maybe let things go a little bit too much.
Oh,
So I think it's
interesting.
just
Okay.
finding that
Yeah.
balance. And I think that's where the ideal leader is
Mhm.
picking and establishing a good team,
Mhm.
making sure we're aligned in terms of our goals and objectives, and
Mhm.
then letting them go. No
Yeah.
pun intended, giving them enough leash
Yeah.
where they can
Yep.
go, but not too much where they go too far.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important as leaders that we allow our teams to make mistakes because that's where the lessons are. And if you can create an environment where it's safe to make a mistake, you're going to get more out of that person because now they feel safe to go faster, grow faster. But then they also feel like, okay, my leader has my back. Should I make a mistake? And we're going to figure out how to fix it together.
Exactly. It's
Hmm.
it's a mistake is only a mistake if there's not a learning opportunity. But if there's a learning opportunity, we can turn it from a traditional mistake
Yeah,
into a learning
that's
opportunity.
right.
Then I think Jason and I are comfortable
Yeah,
with those
everybody
mistakes
wins.
together.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, as you have grown in the franchising industry and as you've been intentional about the growth that you're pursuing in the franchising industry, what do you think our industry is getting right now?
It's a really good question. I think that the more people that I talk to that are getting into franchising are following the advice that I received many years ago, which is you have to really be selective in the candidates that you
Mm,
award franchises
mhm.
to. I was taught that you don't sell franchises, you award them to qualified buyers. And that's the philosophy that we've adopted since the beginning. Even our first candidate or one of our earlier candidates that was in our process for Discovery Day and for the sales process, we did not award a franchise to.
Mhm.
So it's really hard when you just invested a lot of capital into becoming a franchise, you're launching, you're excited. But I think it goes to our overall philosophy of you have to be disciplined. You have
Mm,
to have a plan. And our plan always said we're going to partner with the right people as franchisees.
mhm.
We're going to partner with the right vendors, the right team members at the resort level.
Mhm.
And we're going to have a long term approach. And that's why we launched as a franchise brand in 2011. Here we are in 2026 with 50 locations open, 16 to 18 more coming, now this
Mm.
year. And then for next year, starting in 27, we want to get to 25 plus.
Yeah. Well, and saying no is hard, right?
Absolutely.
And saying no to somebody who's ready and willing to be part of your brand, takes a lot of discipline. I think it sounds like you got some great advice in the beginning, but in the moment, kind of what helped you say no?
So we really spent a lot of time with our first getting to know each other. I think that's
Mhm.
really key. And the more we would talk to this person, things started coming out that led us to the decision. And this
Mhm.
person would say things such as, well, my Canine Resorts is going to operate this way, and the colors are going to be this. And it was not the brand standard.
Right.
So we tried to say, well, wait a second. In a franchise system, things have to be
Right.
consistent
Yeah.
and educate this person. And I think he had the right intentions,
Mhm.
but he just didn't believe in that, and therefore it wouldn't have been a good fit.
Mhm. That's a great point, and honestly, that story is not unique. I've seen a lot of candidates come through the process and come through the pipeline that, um, I at least appreciate it comes out through the process
Mhm.
when they are making comments like, "Okay, well, I might do it like this," and it's like, "Well, wait, hold on. The memo that you need to get is that you're joining a franchise." So that's smart of you to pick up on those red flags and some of what comes through in how has that informed your current franchise development process?
Well, in a big way, because now we are like really super transparent and
Mhm.
very, very clear. To give you a specific example, when candidates ask us, are you going to be flexible if I
Mhm.
become a franchise owner? We would give them always the truthful answer, which is yes, but we really wouldn't go into detail. And that wasn't intentional. It was just we are going to be flexible. But our definition of flexible is
Right.
we work together, you share your ideas, we test it in open locations, corporate locations,
Mhm.
and then we figure out together if it's going to be something we can roll out across the system. And if we do, we do. And if we don't,
Mhm.
we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that because we weren't that clear, people misinterpreted that and thought, well, flexible means I can try things on my own and do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're
Yeah.
just clearer where we explain the expectation and the process. And for the people that can accept that, it's great. And the
Yeah.
people that can, it weeds them out.
Yeah, no, I think clarity and setting expectations is a very important lesson to learn in that process. How have you carried that through beyond FranDev?
I think that in terms of the flexibility, I think the
Mhm,
way that we like to explain to the potential franchisees is if you're driving down the street and the speed limit's 25, but you feel that it should be 45, the proper way to do it is to go and speak to your elected officials or speak to the police department
mhm,
and say, hey, look, I think that the speed limit should be adjusted from 25 to 45, and here are the reasons why. And then if they agree and they implement it, then you can drive 45. You
mhm.
can't just drive 45 miles an hour down the street when the cop pulls you over and say, well, I think it's totally safe.
Yeah.
So the same thing to piggyback on Jason's point. If someone comes in and says, hey, I think we could do things this way,
Mhm.
here are the reasons why, then Jason and I and our organization as the franchisor will go ahead and test that. And if it works out, there's no pride and ownership. We
Right.
will go ahead and we'll implement it, but there has to be a system and a process and a procedure. It can't just be the inmates running the
Mhm.
asylum.
And I
Yeah.
have a really good example on that. Several years ago, we had a franchise owner come into our system who's a multi-unit, multi-brand franchise owner. So
Mhm.
operates different brands, is very successful. And he was getting ready to open his first resort with Canine. And he said, when do we start the pre-sales? And we looked at him and said, what pre-sales? Because
Mhm.
we didn't offer pre-sales. It's not something that we ever thought of doing
Mm.
in the dog boarding and daycare business.
Mhm.
But he educated us that in his prior brand, they were very successful in pre-sales, and it really stimulates the market, and there's
Yep.
brand awareness. There's so
Yep.
many different benefits that come out of that. So we tested it with him at his first location. It was wildly successful, and now it's part of our standard operating procedure for new resorts. And we're actually evolving it, expanding it, and making it better and better each day.
Yeah.
So that's just a great example of someone who understands the franchising, the roles of the franchisee
Yeah.
franchisor
Right.
relationship.
Mm.
And he was able to help us and help the system by doing it the right way.
Okay, I love that example. And yes, pre-sales is something that I think a lot of brands don't think about. When I'm coaching brands around pre-opening and pre-opening strategy, it is all about filling that pipeline and then thinking about, okay, can you take that pipeline and then get revenue from it before it opens? So that's super smart. That's awesome. Tell me, in the pet care industry, obviously this industry has been through some roller coasters since you opened in 2011. What do you see for the future? What do you see? What are the trends and the headwinds and some of the tailwinds that you're seeing?
Sure. So great question. Just a clarification. We started franchising in 2011, but
Gotcha.
we've been in the industry since 99. We found Canine in 2005.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think that when Jason and I founded the Canine Resorts in 2005, we were definitely an innovator and
Mhm.
pioneers in the humanization, if you will,
Mhm.
of the pet care industry. And I think the next evolution that we're seeing now is, 20 years ago, doggy daycare was just you go to work during the day, you want your dog to have a little bit of exercise and a little bit of an
Mhm.
opportunity to have an elimination break. So you put your dog in this room, you put 35 dogs in one room with a few attendants, and that's doggy daycare.
Mhm.
Now we're seeing this evolution, which is more enrichment. So it's more physical, but it's a lot more mental stimulation. So
Yeah.
it's puzzles, it's scent puzzles, it's smaller group sizes. So maybe instead of 35 dogs in one room, it's 8 dogs
Mhm.
with one attendant, and we're doing not training, but more mental
Mhm.
stimulation and mental enrichment. So that's definitely one area. Is I think the increased humanization of the pet
Mhm.
care industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and so when you think about innovation in that, because I obviously starting in the pet care industry in '99 and starting Canine Resorts in 2005, you were innovators and pioneers in the space. How do you hang on to that? Is that something that, as the visionary, you really take charge of and bring to the table? Is it a team effort?
It's definitely a team effort, but I would say that I am the lead
Hmm.
of that particular team. And the reason I say that is because obviously this is a team effort, right?
Yeah.
With Jason and I. Jason focuses a lot more on franchising and the
Mhm.
franchising industry and what are best practices in the
Mhm.
franchise industry.
Yeah.
And I focus more on the pet care industry.
Right.
So what I mean by that is this is the
Okay.
first time in
Mhm.
almost 10 years that I'm at the IFA. I'm
Okay.
super happy to
Yeah.
be here. But Jason's really taking the lead with some of our team members by coming to the
Mhm.
IFA every year, speaking at the IFA, going to this as the national event, but then also going to local and
Right.
regional events. That's what I do in the pet care industry.
Yeah.
So the IBPSA is the IFA, if you will, for the
Mhm.
pet care industry.
Mhm.
So I take the lead on speaking at the
Mhm.
IBPSA, and I speak with my peers and try to put together our thoughts in our heads on
Mhm.
what are the new trends
Yeah.
and what is the evolution, what does the evolution of the pet care industry look like.
Right.
So that's really how, as the visionary, I take the lead on the pet
Yeah.
care aspect, and then Jason takes the lead of implementing that into the franchise system.
Yeah.
And that's again why I think it's, a very good yin and yang relationship.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that you think about it as 2 different industries because it is. And coming up, I've obviously been in franchising for a while, and every brand is 2 different industries.
Sure.
It is franchising and the industry that you live in.
Sure.
So I really appreciate that you guys think about it that way. Um, Tell me more about your journey, right? So you started again, Pecker Industry 99, opened your brand. What leadership lessons have you really stuck to and hung on to throughout that journey?
I think one lesson is in the beginning, obviously, you'll probably hear a lot from entrepreneurs stick to your gut,
Mm.
trust your gut. And I
Mhm.
definitely agree with that. But sort of how we were talking earlier about the micromanagement and the
Yeah.
leadership, right? I think that it could be a double-edged sword because in the beginning,
Mhm.
you're not going to get to a scalable and sustainable level if you don't trust your gut.
Mhm.
So as an entrepreneur, you need to trust your gut. But then when you bring on senior level employees and executives and you have consultants and advisors and peers
And sophisticated
and
franchisees.
sophisticated franchisees,
Yeah.
you also have to listen where your gut might tell you to go in this direction. But if all of the other indicators are saying we should go in this direction,
Mhm.
to say, let me challenge my gut and let me see where that gets me and allow me to test the
Mhm.
waters, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one lesson in leadership that I've definitely personally learned.
And I would say to add to that and really, just add a little bit more color now that the brand has grown, we have more data. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that I think to add to what Steven just said. You can look at your gut, and I think your gut is very strong as an entrepreneur. But now we have a lot of data, a lot of metrics, a
Mhm.
lot of information on what has worked
Yep.
in the first 50 locations that we've opened. And we've opened those locations across the country. So we're not regional. It's Connecticut all the way to California. So there are things that work better in certain markets and there are things that work best in all markets. And now that we have the data to support that, we can have a real good conversation with our franchise owners and educate them on why we do things a certain way and we can back it up.
Yeah. You mentioned sophisticated owners, and I think that's a really good point because some franchise brands, and you mentioned your multi-unit, multi-brand franchisee that came in. Some brands are kind of like come out the gate and they want, these sophisticated owners and the mumbos and,
Yeah.
and all that jazz. But sometimes that stresses the system because you're not ready for it. And so I'd love to hear some anecdotes around how those sophisticated owners have helped and maybe hurt your path and kind of how it shaped it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that in the beginning, like a lot of other brands, we wanted that multi unit
Mhm.
operator. We weren't ready for it and we didn't get any, right? In the
Yeah.
beginning, we sold a bunch of single and double packs,
Mhm.
and they would build out one at a time and then, go to location number two if they bought a two pack. Now we're getting a lot, almost, exclusively multi unit operators.
Mhm.
And I think that says a lot about the brand. I
Yep.
think that says a lot
It
about
does.
the evolution and the way that
Mhm.
we've scaled. So again, I think we did it in a way that the brand, multi-unit people are going to come when the brand is ready. And I
Mhm.
think if you try to force it and have them come on a little bit too
Mhm.
early, I agree with you. There are going to be missteps because they're going to expect certain processes and systems in place that as a younger brand, you're not going to have in
Mhm.
place. They're going to get frustrated. Maybe they're not going to continue to develop.
Mhm.
And then you're not going to sell or award any more units at that
Yeah.
point.
Right.
So I think you have to be really strategic and disciplined. You have to have a plan as a brand on how you are going to expand.
In general, where do you see the future of franchising headed?
I think that franchising is getting more sophisticated as a
Mhm.
whole and as a group. I think that a lot of brands are leveraging technology to really help from a training standpoint, from a consistency standpoint. So I definitely think the industry is headed in the right direction. I think the IFA has been doing a really great job at continuously raising the bar at their conferences, at their larger ones, the regional ones, and through their, educational programs. I think they're doing a really nice job. So I'm positive on the franchising industry. I'm super positive on the pet caring. It's an industry that has grown for the last 25 years, year over year over year.
Right.
So super excited about that and excited about canine resorts and the opportunity that we have to continue to open in different communities across the country.
What do you think franchising needs more of?
A good question. Personally, I think that maybe the franchisors can do a better job of setting expectations. I think going back to what we had discussed earlier in terms of, are you flexible? Well, define flexible, right? So I think maybe, and even with our brand, right? We just had a conversation, Jason and I, with our senior vice president of operations, where we said, before someone comes on board, right? And then as soon as they come on board, during that onboarding process, let's explain the expectation. What does a good franchisor look like? What are our responsibilities as the franchisor?
Right.
And what does a good franchisee look like, right? So it's
Yep.
our job. We always say you have to have the skill and the will to be successful. And I always say in franchising, you have to have the proper equipment and you have to have the proper talent, like a car race, right? So if you're driving a Ferrari, but you're not a professional race car driver, you're probably not going to win the race. And if you're a professional race car driver, but you're in a Dodge Caravan minivan, you're probably not going to win the race, right? So it's our job as the franchisor to provide the playbook, the recipe book, right? And it's our job to identify and provide the equipment, but then the talent to then go ahead and implement that on a day-to-day basis, that's the job of the franchisee. So I think just setting that expectation on what does a good franchisor look like? We're going to provide the model. We're going to provide the support. We're going to provide the marketing, right, on a national level. But then you're going to go and implement that. They're your employees. You're going to hire the employees. You have to make sure you take our training and train the employees, and then you have to make sure you hold them accountable. So I think just maybe we, as an industry, we could do a little bit of a better job of just setting those expectations up front, so that as the franchisor, we know what to expect from the franchisee, and the franchisees know what to expect from us, and we can hold each other accountable.
Yes, clarity and expectations. I love it. And what do you think we need less of?
Regulation. That was an easy one. I don't think we have control over that. Maybe we can, what's the word I'm looking for? We can
Lobby
thank
the
you.
IFA,
Exactly. Yes.
get to Washington. And, there's a lot of noise about joint employer. I think that, they're constantly, the government is constantly switching their position on joint employer. I think we need a solid, we need an understanding of that. And it needs to be something that Congress and the Senate can vote on so that it lasts. It can't be done by executive order one way or another. We need clarity for the long term.
Very good. And so if I had a crystal ball, and let's pretend I do, where in 10 years do you see you got yourselves and canine resorts?
So I see canine resorts as continuing to be the leader in high quality, premium, award winning pet care, just in many more markets than we're in today. I see a consistent business. So whether you're in New Jersey or Florida, no matter where you are, you're getting that consistent experience that's done, with a lot of work from a lot of people, both at the corporate office and at the, inside the resort. I see us continuing to lead a brand together that we're extremely proud of as we are today. So I see the future getting brighter and brighter as the years go on.
Awesome. Well, Jason and Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Brought to you by my podcast host.